Hello, I'm just going to have a quick tech check to see if my face is appearing in all the places that I hope it will. And it seems that it is. So from overwhelm to over it, going to have a bit of a chat about this today, a bit of an exploration. So I wanted to start by looking at what does overwhelm mean? So sometimes it's useful to look at a dictionary definition, isn't it? Because sometimes we can have words we use for things that don't actually match up to that. So in the dictionary, it says to have a strong emotional effect on. So essentially, what are we talking about? We're talking about how we relate to particular emotions. So I like to look at this moving from the sort of more tangible components of it, so from the outer, and then kind of move inwards with it. So when we are looking at addressing that sense of overwhelm, now I don't know what brings it up for you, because sometimes people can experience being overwhelmingly happy. But commonly, when it comes to overwhelm, people aren't looking at the emotions that they have a preference for. They're looking at the emotions that they're more uncomfortable with. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. So if you're overwhelmingly happy, maybe this isn't the right video for you. But when you're experiencing those more uncomfortable emotions, which tend to lend themselves to some kind of behavior or pattern to try and get away from it, which then ends up, unfortunately, with us having this big gap between kind of moving towards what we say we're working towards and then resorting back to some kind of behavior to cope again. So that's what we're going to be looking at, closing the distance between. So for me, the first step, really useful one, is to notice the physical reaction. Okay, sometimes people don't acknowledge this, but commonly there's a physical response to feeling overwhelmed. One of the first things that happens is the breath changes. Okay, it can often become quite shallow, or there'll be patterns of holding it, creating a lot of tension. Some people grit their teeth, start to clench their jaw. Some people clench their fists or their toes. If you can start noticing the physical triggers, you can start noticing what you're doing that maybe contribute to it building up, getting worse. So a way that we can check in with this is it's going to take you reminding yourself of it, is something called a physiological sigh. Super simple breathing exercise. You inhale to almost full, slight pause, a little bit more, and then you exhale slowly through the mouth like you're letting air out of a balloon, just letting it go soft. So that's a way to check in with like the physical qualities that start to appear when you're experiencing overwhelm. That will give you a little bit of space. Next, we can then look at, once you've started to develop that ability to just notice the physical reactions when you experience a degree of overwhelm, you can start to look at what are the triggers for that. And there'll be a process here. It will take a little bit of time for you to start to notice those triggers. But once you start to recognize those triggers, that lends itself to start to recognize where your mind goes in relationship to those triggers. Because that is when we can start to look at, okay, what do I believe in these circumstances? What is my relationship with what starts to come up in these situations? Because I like to say that ultimately all emotions are visitors. And it's our ability to be okay with the visitors, not the tendencies that a lot of us have to kind of fight against some of them and be welcoming to others. For me, our ability to kind of be more welcoming with all of them is what perpetuates growth, as opposed to just tussling with some of them and being okay with others. So once we start to go into that space, we can start to have a bit of an exploration of, you know, why does it mean that to me? So I'll give you a personal example. So for me, when I notice that I'm moving into a space of, if I use the dictionary definition, kind of an excess of an emotion that perhaps I would normally label negatively, I kind of know where that comes from. So if I give you a personal example, as some of you will know, I grew up in a home where violence was quite common. I was always sort of looking at, okay, when's something going to kick off? And the underlying kind of belief that I formed was I'm not safe and I'm not going to be okay in some way. And that is the thought process that tends to come up for me if I'm moving into a space of overwhelm. So for me, what I look at is when I'm feeling that way, what do I need? What do I need to bring into my experience? And usually it's just a little bit of reassurance for myself. Okay, that part of me that's moving into that sort of more anxious, that state of overwhelm, all it needs is a bit of reassurance. And the problem is, if we don't learn to bring what we need to our own experience, that's when usually we start to reach for some kind of crutch or some kind of way of just trying to get rid of what we're not comfortable with. So that's kind of the process that I've found really, really useful. Start with the physical responses. Okay, notice the changes in the breath, notice the physical responses in the body, maybe the jaw, maybe the hands, maybe you just start feeling your shoulders crunch up. Start to notice those. Use that physiological sigh as a means to just soften and let go. That will give you some space to start noticing the thoughts that you tend to get caught up in when these emotions are there. And then that lends itself to looking at where does that come from and what do I need to bring into my experience in order that I can be okay with this, as opposed to looking for some kind of means to kind of push it away or get rid of it. Because unfortunately, this has been my ongoing experience. The more we fight against what we're experiencing, the more we find that we go into this, what I call the bungee cord. We're trying to move towards something and we get pulled back because something we haven't learned to be okay with appears again. So until we learn to be okay with it, we keep getting that push-pull going on. Now, if you perhaps found something within this helpful, let me know. Let me know what your own tendencies are when you move into a space of overwhelm. If you totally disagree with everything I've said, let me know about that as well. It'd be interesting to hear your point of view on it. I'll catch you in the next one. Have a wonderful weekend, and bye for now.